Okay, so I get this question a lot about, how do you make a living once you graduate college? So my major in college was jazz performance on drum set. And once you have that degree in jazz performance on drum set, how does that translate into earning a living as a musician? And the short answer is it doesn't really translate into anything. In fact, I've never had anybody ever ask me about my BA in jazz performance to qualify for a job or a gig. It's never happened to me. That doesn't mean that there's no value in going to school and like studying, because the things you learn in college prepare you for the world at large. So earning that degree took a lot of work and a lot of effort, and it really improved me as a player, no doubt, because it put me in the position to do that. But having the piece of paper itself is not guaranteeing that you'll get some kind of a job or a gig. So what some of my friends did is, pretty much they went out and hustled. Some of them moved out to Manhattan and just threw themselves into the scene and played and played and played and played. A couple of them did all right, where they found gigs, and a couple of them didn't. So it's a gamble, when you do it that way. Not to say that you can't be successful. Depends on how good you are and how tenacious you are. So tenacity tends to beat talent when it comes to this whole thing that we're doing. My situation, I felt a little too uncomfortable to just move into this urban center where you have to pay tons of rent and jump into that. And in hindsight, I don't know if that was the best move for me. I don't know. My life might be vastly different had I just said, you know what, I'm moving to Manhattan, I'm moving to LA, I'm moving to Nashville, and I'm going to some kind of music center and throwing myself into the scene. I never really did that. It just wasn't inside my comfort zone at the time. So for me, what I did as soon as I graduated college was I went home, and I know I needed to make a living. So I was like, how can I make money instantly? So for me, teaching seemed to be the way. Now, I didn't want to be a teacher. I didn't go to school for education, but I had no problem teaching one-on-one. I had done it through college. So I knew I could make money teaching, and that was really my motivation in the beginning. It wasn't really to help students, it was really to make money. That's what I was trying to do. So I opened up the white or yellow pages or whatever, resource book, if anyone knows what that is. I know that doesn't exist anymore, but yeah, basically you get a utility book that has all the businesses that are local to your area. And I looked for music stores that were potentially offering drum lessons. And I made a list of all these stores. I went like 45 minutes east of my parents' house and 45 minutes towards Manhattan, the other way. And I just made a list of about 10 different locations. And then I just drove. I drove out to the furthest one out east, and I stopped in. I made myself a quick little resume, and I said, hey, I'm a drummer. I just graduated college. I do have a BA in jazz performance, but are you looking for a drum teacher? And a bunch of them were like, no, we're not looking for a teacher right now. But a couple of them, after going to 10 different places, I ended up coming home with 3 positions. Now, nobody offered me students yet, but it was like, 3 people that were like, yeah, sure, we'll take your resume, and if we get some students for you, we'll give you a shot. So after just hustling, and spending it only took me about a day to hit every single one of these stores. I came home with 3 different locations. Unfortunately, they weren't all close to each other. So one was in Northport, which was about a half hour east. I had one in Rockville Center, which was like a half hour west. So it was like there was a lot of jumping around. But what ended up happening is each one of them started giving me a couple of students. And one of them, kind of like shined more than the other. One in East Northport became like the main hub because they were getting me the most students the fastest way. And that also happened to be a percussion learning center, so they were focused on drums. So I was able to kind of shed off the other, 2 stores that I was working in and just focus on this one place and building it there. Now, all the while I was doing this, I was also doing everything in my power to get gigs. So I was also gigging on the weekends. That means I was answering like Craigslist, and I was going to record stores and open mics and jam sessions and sitting in. Anything I could do to try to get a gig and fill up my calendar on the weekends. So I was doing a lot of cover bands. I was doing a lot of sideman gigs where, original artists would call me. They wouldn't necessarily pay well, but it would put me in a situation where I was out there playing and people could see me. And through doing that, I started getting a couple of steady cover band gigs that didn't pay great, but it was like, like $100. And I could do that like maybe a couple on a weekend and bring an extra couple of $100 that way. But teaching really became like a thing for me. And I ended up falling in love with it. So as you start doing it, I really enjoyed the molding and shaping. And also I saw how much it helped me as a player by teaching. So I kind of started heading more down into the educational realm. Although I never stopped playing. I did have an original band, and we did tour and we did all that for a few years. But that's not super lucrative. You're not making a ton of money doing that. That's like a hustle until unless you get a big break or a big deal, which is it's a difficult thing to do. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It's just it's a lottery ticket. If you get a big gig like that, and anyone that gets that kind of gig, that's amazing. But yeah, from there, my weekend gigs got a little bit more high end. Bar gigs turned into cover bands, turned into like more established, well-named weekend bands, club date bands, things like that, to eventually wedding bands. And I started getting to the wedding circuit, and the wedding circuit pays better, so you started doing that. And you just I kind of moved up the ladder in terms of gigging, and as far as teaching, it's the same thing. Eventually, I left the music store, and I started working on my own. I've rented my own studio in Amityville, and I started having students come to me there. I was still even driving around from student to student. I was doing everything I could do to fill up my calendar. And that's kind of what you start doing. You just started going out and hustling until eventually you get into this niche where you have plenty of students during the week and then my gigs on the weekends. And I supported myself as a player for years like that. That's literally how my income happened for years. So there's definitely room to do it like that. But you got to be willing to hustle. So as long as you have a little bit of hustle in you, there's definitely a path. So I don't know if that story helps anybody, but if you're, unsure about yourself as a musician, just understand that if you have that drive and you have that hustle, that's what it takes. But I'd love to know what you all think. So if you have any questions about this, or if you're an aspiring musician and you're trying to get out there and you're trying to figure out ways, let me know in the comments. Ask me a question. If you have a question, I'll definitely answer you down in these comments. And who knows, I might even answer in video format if it's the kind of thing that's a really good question. So go ahead and leave me a comment down below. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel, because that really helps the channel grow. But education is my main thing. This question came from one of my students. And a lot of my students I help mentor towards getting that kind of work, if that's their outcome. Just helping push them, helping, creating that hustle. Because I think a lot of it is not students not knowing, not having the drive. I don't think that's the problem. I think the issue is just not knowing what to do. So, we workshop on strategies for actually getting out there and figuring out how to be a pro musician. And like I said, there's room if you're willing to do the hustle and you can play. So those are the two things. You got to be willing to hustle and you got to play. So if anyone's interested in talking about that, I am offering these 45-minute strategy sessions to talk about your playing, to talk about your career goals, to talk about where you want to go as a drummer. And I could also introduce you to my current education platform if that's something anyone's interested in. And if you'd like to check that out, check out the link down in the description. And if I have one of those available, just click on the link. If it's active and there's spots available, you could go ahead and book one. If it's not open right now, then, maybe it will be in the future. But I'll see if I can set up some kind of waiting list if there's no options available for you. All right, so go ahead and do that. Click the link down in the description and book a call with me. And yeah, we'll talk about your playing.